Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Broncos. Bree could not join us today, so I'm sitting with my man at Zach Seegers. Zach Seegers, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Glad to be with you, Joey. Throwback to the What's on Draft days.
Ooh,
Yeah, excited to break down this game, get it out of the way so we can all enjoy a lovely national championship together. Hope you're able to join us live. No matter how you're listening to us, please go check out Let's Talk Broncos YouTube and our audio versions. That'll be a big help to us. Just excited for what we have to talk about today.
yes, without question. If you thought that we were going to miss that national championship game, you have another thing coming. That is definitely not happening. We had to move the podcast up, but we still had to do it, Zach, because there's like a ton to talk about today. Obviously, we had exit interviews. Um, we had
Sorry.
exit interviews today. We had a lot go on. We had a bunch of head coach different things going on. Like it was a busy day, and then of course yesterday's big win. Like it was a lot. So let's hop straight into it with yesterday's win, Zach. Jerry Jeudy was phenomenal. He was amazing. So I want your thoughts. Jerry Jeudy surpasses 1,000 all-purpose yards yesterday in the big win. Came up short of 1,000 receiving yards. Hey, but we'll take it. It's a huge improvement for him. Zach, how are you feeling about Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, the fact it's all purpose and not receiving is a bit of an asterisk. If you call those swing passes out to him that were ruled carries because they were technically laterals, receptions, and he's being used practically as a receiver on that play, just as a space player. He hits that 1,000-yard mark. And also, it doesn't matter how you pick up the yardage, right?
Yeah,
Like it doesn't matter. All that matters is that you picked it up.
Exactly.
The fact it's also in 17 games, like there are some asterisks on it, but he wasn't close to this until he exploded down the stretch. Really, since that first Chiefs game, he has been on a tear. I need to pull up his end of season yards per route run numbers. If you can gush about Jerry Jeudy for a second, actually, I'll do that right now.
Yeah, I'll hit the comments real quick. New watching live, Dal says, finally catching alive as I'm leaving work. Hashtag lurk. Nice to finally see you live. I think Cal Hobson, he says beer name. This is JJ1K. That made me laugh. But yeah, I'll hop in about what Jerry Judy's talking about. Like Jerry Jeudy had a phenomenal season. You kind of hit on it. I think he's been the most improved player on this Broncos team, and I think the best offensive player the Broncos had this entire year. Jerry Jeudy was awesome. He was a phenomenal football player for the Broncos, and he kind of showed us why the Broncos drafted him where they drafted him. I think that was the big thing for everybody to this point. Like all the critics were like, why we draft this guy where he did? Justin Jefferson was behind him, all these people. And of course, he's still not living up to Justin Jefferson hype, but I don't think he has to be a productive player on the Broncos. He showed you that. He's an awesome, awesome football player. And I'm just excited to have him here. Zach, did you get those numbers pulled up by chance?
Almost there here. I got my receiving versus scheme. Sorry, everybody. This is not great. I'll just talk about Jerry Jeudy for a little bit. I loved how we're seeing designer plays for him. It's something I think you brought up. I mean, all throughout the season, really. But I think maybe dating back to that Chiefs game, dating back to when he was starting to be used as an X. And I think without him taking over play calling, we've only seen that built on. I'm really excited for what we could get out of Jerry Jeudy next year. I don't know. I think the sky's the limit for him. Okay, yards per out run against man. He is still number one, still the only player over 4 yards per out run against man coverage. Second place is Mike Williams at 3.7, so almost a whole half yard behind Jerry Jeudy. 4.14 also compares really well historically. If you go back to 2021. Oh man, come on, help me out here. Site load a little quicker. Hello everyone for joining us. Oh man, this is terrible. You can like the site just like hook me up a little. Okay, thank you. Cooper Kupp last year is really the only one who compares. He was at 4.22, and of course Cooper Kupp's season was absolutely out of the world last year. Against zone 2, which is not Judy's bread and butter, but we saw a lot of growth from him there. He wound up 37th out of how many qualified here? Sorry, everybody. Great podcasting. Out of at least 100 qualifying receiver, 140 qualifying receivers, he ranks 39th. So that's pretty good overall. And then elite against man coverage, leaps and bounds this year is how Jerry Jeudy has grown. And in a season that was so dark, I think the best part of it was Jerry Jeudy emerging as like this legit offensive player and kind of what everyone hoped they were going to be getting back when he was drafted in 2000.
No, without a question. Jerry Jeudy was awesome. I don't think there's much else to say there. I guess, Zach, I just have a follow-up real quick. Under any circumstance, would you trade Jerry Jeudy this next offseason? I'm only asked that because there was rumors this trade deadline, if he would be traded, it seemed like it was a possibility.
Under any circumstances, because that was your question, I think yes.
I guess. Okay, so what are the circumstances where you would?
Yeah, I think it would be if you have an understanding that he's not interested in re-signing long-term. Now, I don't think this is the case. I don't think these circumstances will be in play. But if you're confident he's not interested in re-signing long-term, he doesn't want to stick around in Denver. He's tired of all the losing. He's annoyed with the fans, whatever. Like if he just wants out, then I think you might trade him. His stock's going to be pretty high this offseason from, trade deadline where it was maybe you're going to get a 3rd round pick. I think you maybe could get a first back. Just looking at the wide receiver market right now and how expensive it is. Granted, like guys last year were going for first, but that was also coming with an expensive contract. Jeudy still has 2 years before a crazy wide receiver contract would kick in. And wide receivers, now that they look like a premium position, you can get a cost-controlled wide receiver for 2 years who seems to be blossoming into his own, also has never really gotten to work in a functional offense or with a great quarterback outside of the second half of this last game. So maybe he could yield a 1st round pick. If you can get a 1st round pick for him and he doesn't want to stick around, maybe in that world. Again, I think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely that should go over everything I just said, but I do think it's like in the realm of possibility, just barely.
I get that. Hop in the comments real quick. Frankie says, "What's up? What's up, Frankie?" Kyle says Jerry Jeudy should be traded, and then follows it up with rebuild for real, for real. Frankie usually agrees, saying Jeudy is only like 24. But I'm kind of so I think I'm always under the belief that every single football player has a price. Like if they're asking something stupid for it, you should take it if it helps your team. I just don't think that an offer will come about where I'm going to be willing to part with Jerry Jeudy. I think he's going to be too valuable to this Broncos team next season. He's really with Jerry Jeudy right now, the Broncos could use another receiver. I'm not willing to get rid of the one that looks the most promising. I'm really not, especially with Frankie's point. His age, I think he can live on past the Russ era, need be. I don't want to get rid of that guy.
There's no reason why, like Cal's in the chat saying literally nobody should be safe right now. And I understand that logic, but I also think like, again, if there's a king's ransom for it, but I just – wide receivers are a premium position. Every reason why I just said Jerry Jeudy might be very appealing to another team is kind of why the Broncos should keep him. He's a very, very talented player. And no matter what version of it, like let's say we're going the Russ teardown route, the rebuild route, that's probably when it's more appealing to move on from Jerry Jeudy. But you're going to want Jerry Jeudy in place in this offense, in my opinion, to help that young rookie quarterback succeed. If that's the route you're going to go. Looking at quarterback hit rates, one of the things I feel I've learned in recent years is that instilling that confidence early and surrounding them with a lot of talent early and really setting them up to succeed, I think is huge. Taking a lot off their plate early on in their career. And I just don't think the Broncos are in a position to move on from Jerry Jeudy and then turn around, draft a young quarterback, and feel like they're setting up that young quarterback to succeed. How do you get a young rookie quarterback? In the move on from Russ path, you'd move on from Russ, be bad next year, and then you draft a quarterback in 2024. Again, and then with you're keeping Russell Wilson path, you're in win now mode, and you don't have many premium assets to acquire promising weapons like Jerry Jeudy. So in that world, you don't want to move on from Jeudy unless you get, again, like a high first round pick that gives you the ability to replace him. So yeah, it's really hard to see the world where it happens, though I do think it's like technically possible.
Okay. Interesting stuff. I don't want to get too far away from yesterday's game, though. Let's talk about Justin Simmons. He created 8 turnovers on the season, if I'm not mistaken. And that is more than he has ever, and he played in less games. Yesterday created 2 turnovers. He's been an awesome football player for the Broncos for a really long time. A building block, a guy that I really would like to see win as a Bronco, truthfully, because it's been a bit. And he's never made the playoffs as a Bronco, crazy enough. Zach, what did you think of Justin Simmons' game yesterday?
I thought it was amazing. I think the tear he's been on since the Ravens game is absurd. Like 8 takeaway opportunities, 5 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, maybe 2 forced fumbles and a fumble recovery. Yeah, he's been insane. I don't know if he'll make All Pro just because, he only played in 12 games this year. He missed a little more than a quarter of the season, and that's really going to ding him. But the level he's played at over these last few weeks has been exceptional. And I think he's the prototypical modern safety. And I don't know. I think that should kind of be rewarded.
Yeah, he's been a perfect safety for this Broncos team on and off the field, right? Like when the Broncos handed him that extension, it made so much sense because it's not just that he's a great football player. He's the type of guy that you want representing your football team. It's hand in hand. And Justin Simmons has brought both of those to the Broncos. And then like this year, I think he's had one of his best seasons yet, if not the best season yet for him, which is crazy. It's really, really crazy that a guy that we thought so highly of, a lot of people will say he's the best safety in the game in years past. And he's coming off a season where I'm like, damn, I think he got even better this year. Like he looks better. So it's just phenomenal on his part. Justin Simmons, like I said earlier, is a building block for this Broncos team. He's a guy that you want to put other players around and win with. He's that perfect guy. I think he could fit any locker room in the league. There's no weird fit. You had another thing to say, Zach? Oh, no, you're good. Okay. Let's move on then. Russell Wilson. All right, I'm excited to hear Zach's take on this. Obviously, everyone's aware of his takes on Russ. Everybody is aware of it. But yesterday, Zach, he had 283 passing yards. He had 3 touchdowns, only had 1 interception. Is he a guy that you think now the Broncos you would lean more to keeping this season? I know they're arguing about this in the chat right now. Has it changed at all? Is it on the skates a little more?
Let's talk about it. I'm going to convince Mike Mindungus, friend of the show, who it isn't on the train. I think it'd be foolish to dismiss all of Russ's problems as Hackett. And I think you can look at the post-Hackett era for very clear evidence of that, frankly. You can also look at the pre-Hackett era. Russ's decline goes back at least 2.5 seasons. There's an argument it goes back to 2018. That was the last time he was really at his peak. 2019, you see a drop-off. 2020, you see another drop-off. And 2021, you see a drop-off after that. But Zach, you say, he had his most passing touchdowns in 2020. Yes, because he got off to an amazing start to the season. If you remember the first 8 games, he is the undisputed MVP frontrunner. And then down the stretch, it gets so bad that he doesn't even garner consideration by the end of it. That's when defenses made this shift to these 2 high shells against him, and Russ was unable to adapt to it. It forces him to play in an underneath box, and he's just not able to do that at this point in his career. He really hasn't been able to do it ever in his career, but he could work around it because he could extend plays long enough that things would open in other areas of the field. And it would also work the fact that save the fact that he holds onto the ball for too long. Now that mobility has declined a little bit, he's not able to change his throwing lanes to see that short to intermediate area of the field where everyone wants him to work with it, or defenses are forcing him to work inside. And I don't think he's able to create as much outside of the pocket. Now, I've always been saying, although I think Russ is washed, Hackett was absolutely making the problem worse. And getting rid of Hackett was going to fix Russ to an extent. I think Russ can get to a Kirk Cousins-ish level. I really think that's the peak now. I think he's going to be a product of his system. And it's going to look different. It won't look like Kirk Cousins. These are players with different strengths, different weaknesses. But I think that is the tier where he's in now, in the Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy Garoppolo tier, where he's a product of the system around him. He is not creating the offensive success in the same way he was in his prime. And again, the evidence of this post-Hackett, the first halves of games still exist. And we've seen him have awesome first halves before. The Raiders' first half is a near flawless first half, near flawless. The first time they played the Chargers, the first half is excellent. Again, a near perfect game. Against the Jaguars, the second half of that game is terrific. Really clean quarterbacking. Second half of the Chiefs game, again, really clean quarterbacking. We've seen these. Now, this was the best half of football he played. I'm not going to besmirch that. And there was a lot of things to be optimistic about for the future. Sorry, Joey. I know I'm branding here.
No, you're good.
On this. But it's still one half of football. And when we saw him have a great half against the Raiders, he followed it up with the Colts game, maybe his worst game of the season. And then he had the great half against the Chargers, and then he sunk back down again. It's been up and down all season. And now I think we're going to ascribe additional meaning to this game simply because it's the last one in the season and it can't be followed up by an inconsistent performance. And again, the first halves of games still exist. I think these first halves get kind of forgotten about because the second half kind of ultimately defines the narrative in our minds. But man, if the Chargers take a little long on their final drive, Russ's first half stat line is 207 for 13 yards. And he had a sack for 10 yards. So that's 8 dropbacks, 3 yards gained for 29 minutes and 30 seconds. That is 49.7% of the game. That is a large chunk of that season finale, folks. Hackett's gone, so Russ is great. How do you explain? That's a quarter of the post-Hackett era. That's a quarter of it. And then in the first half against the Chiefs, he's 12 of 20 for 103 yards, 2 sacks for a loss of 15. So that's 3 sacks minus 25 yards, and a total of 116 passing yards. So that's 91 on 30 dropbacks in 59 minutes and 30 seconds, nearly half, just a smidge under 50% of the post-Hackett era. Russ has had 30 dropbacks and the offense has gained 91 yards. That is half of the post-Hackett era. To everyone saying that Hackett's gone and now Russ has fixed his problems. If you're under 5 yards per attempt, it's something called the Blaine Gabbert zone that's coined by a podcast I like. And it was accurate because Blaine Gabbert, when he was busting, was this dink and dunk offense, and it was miserable to watch. It was horribly inefficient. That's 5 yards per attempt. Russ is at 3 yards per attempt for half of the post-Hackett era. This is far from fixed. It's a step in the right direction. There's promise. There's things I think you can build around now. I feel a lot more optimistic than I did a few weeks ago, but far from fixed. Sorry, Joey. I just talked for 20 minutes straight to talk forever.
You're all good, dude. I don't have much to say. I mean, I would love to play devil's advocate here, but I kind of agree with you, Zach. I do. And I want everyone to know, I don't think Zach's take isn't will the Broncos cut Russ. It's if the Broncos should cut If he were in charge, would he? It's what would Zach do, right? I think that Zach's opinion would completely change if it was will the Broncos. I don't think he thinks the Broncos will end up doing it. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. My thing here is, so I think this season, to Mike's point, this season will be the worst Russ we will see. I really think that. I think this season is the worst Russ we will see. It was terrible. I think you hit it perfectly. Hackett was really bad. That the other players around the team, the supporting cast, wasn't very good at all. It just wasn't a good situation for him to succeed at all. But he still should have done better, even in the scenario that he was in. Without question, he should have played better. And I guess I would just ask people, like, is average or even a little below average, is that worth it? Like, I think that kind of puts us where we were in years past. No, it puts us where we just were with the Teddy Bridgewaters, all these other quarterbacks. It just, I mean, this is a talking point I hit on so many years in the past, and we haven't really hit on it this year because it feels like we're stuck in the situation we are. But you guys need to understand, or everyone needs to understand, that the margin for error when you have an average quarterback and he's not good or above is so slim. You need everything to go right on your team. That little offensive line mistake hits home a lot harder with average. The wide receiver that you're missing hits a lot harder with average. If you have a little bit of a defensive problem, that's not going to work. You need to build a perfect situation to win with average quarterback play. And I'm just not sure I want to put myself all the way back through that. Now, like I said earlier, I think the Broncos will end up keeping Russell Wilson. I'm hoping, and we'll get into this later, that they're able to hire a head coach with enough investment involved where that guy can live past the Russell Wilson era, where he can try to make it work with Russell. And if it doesn't, okay, we're off and we're moving with this new guy. But yeah, that's just kind of where I stand.
Yeah, I'm fully with you. He's a system quarterback now. He is a product of his system. And that's fine if you have a middle-of-the-road quarterback contract or a rookie quarterback contract, because you can put that quarterback in an awesome system with those resources. The Broncos are low on picks and they are low on money. They do not have the resources to surround a quarterback that's dependent on his environment in the environment required to win. The ultimate goal is winning a Super Bowl. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, you cannot picture Russell Wilson hoisting that Lombardi trophy in orange and blue. Like, I don't think that's possible. I think the ceiling is he wins a playoff game. And I think that's everything goes right. The defense returns as elite. They hire the right offensive coach and he's able to maximize Russ and get him to like that middle of the road level at this point in his career. Mike is responding to the mobility saying, look at his rushing touchdowns. I would say, I'm not saying he's immobile. I'm not saying he's Joe Flacco. I'm saying he's not the Fran Tarkenton-esque, Michael Vick-esque scrambler that he was early in his career. I think that's undeniable. I think you can watch him get chased down from behind by defensive tackles all season long, and that proves that. That was not happening in his Seattle career. Mike says, obviously, that's on the offensive line. I would say the offensive line is certainly a big problem. But the offensive line was the problem his whole time in Seattle, and then he leaves and suddenly it gets better. I mean, we have a decade of data suggesting that Russell Wilson contributes to his offensive line problems, and the film supports that. He holds onto the ball forever. And I don't think his pocket presence is great. He's like inside the pocket, like footwork and mobility, his ability to manipulate the pocket and buy time inside of the pocket, I don't think is great. I think it's gotten him in trouble a lot this year. Now he used to account for that by being this historically great, again, Fran Tarkenton-esque, Mike Vick-esque scrambler. And now that his mobility is 80% of what it was, he's just not that guy anymore. It's not that he's Joe Flacco. It's not that he's 2015 Peyton Manning. It's that the game has evolved away from him, and the best weapons he had to combat those defensive adaptions have declined a little with age. And so now he's playing with two hands tied behind his back. And because he's still got some great traits, I do think he can get back to that middle of the road level. But man, if you think he can get back to being a top 6 quarterback in the NFL, looking at what the top 10, 12 quarterbacks in the NFL look like, I think you are greatly overrating a single half or 4 of football.
Well, there you go. I'm gonna hop into a different conversation here. We've preached about Russell Wilson and our opinion on him enough. I want to hop into exit interviews today, and I thought Garrett Bowles had a really, really good interview, and it was kind of telling. Especially, it's going to lead us in more to this head coach thing, coaching issues this year. If you're a Russell Wilson supporter, in the comments on certain stuff like that. So let's get right into it.
Is going to be, vital for us. Somebody that's disciplined, somebody that has accountability, and that doesn't break their rules. That's what we need. We need a tough guy. It's always valuable when you have a coach that that's been successful, or it's coached in this league a long time. It's hard just to come in and think you have all the answers. You know what I'm saying? You got to surround yourself with key people. You got to surround yourself with people that have been in this league and that understand this league, because this league can chew you up and spit you out. That's just the reality of the NFL. You got to know who you are. You got to be consistent. So having a consistent coach is going to be vital for us. Somebody that's disciplined, somebody that has accountability, and that doesn't break their rules. That's what we need. We need a tough guy. It's always valuable when you have a coach that that's been successful, or it's coached in this league a long time. It's hard just to come in and think you have all the answers. You know what I'm saying? You got to surround yourself with key people. You got to surround yourself with people that have been in this league and that understand this league, because this league can chew you up and spit you out. That's just the reality of the NFL. You got to know who you are. You got to be consistent. So having a consistent coach is going to be vital for us. Somebody that's disciplined, somebody that has accountability, and that doesn't break their rules. That's what we need. Zach? We need a tough guy. It's always valuable when you.
Okay. So I thought that was really telling. We played that twice on there so everybody knows exactly what he made some hard-hitting points in there, I thought. Some really hard-hitting points on this last coaching cycle, or on this last head coach. And maybe offensive line coach. But Zach, what do you make of what Garrett Bowles said?
I think it's really interesting. It's a very specific thing to say. Like, a lot of it's general. I'm really pointing to the coming in thinking you know everyone and not putting good people around you. That's a little more general, but I think it's a little too on the nose to what happened in Denver to be coincidental. Maybe I'm wrong, speculating, of course. The one where he says, what is it exactly? Breaking your own rules and thinking you know everything or whatever. That seems like a direct shot. I don't know at who or about what. I'm trying to ask around and figure out if I can get more insight on that.
Yeah,
but that feels specific. Like, come in and break their own rules. That's it's too weird to be pulled out of the blue, in my opinion. But I don't. Again, I'm speculating. Feel free to disagree.
No, I thought it was telling. It had to be someone. Where would he just pull that out from? That's not a common coaching point. That's not something you say unless it was absolutely done. Who says we need a coach in here that doesn't break his own rules? No, you would have to have experience that to point something out like that. I don't know who it is. From everything I heard, every Butch Berry story was kind of the players didn't really love him. From every Nathaniel Hackett story I hear, it wasn't. I think the players liked him. I don't think he demanded a ton of. I don't know how to say this nicely. I don't think he demanded a ton of respect, though. Personally, that's kind of what I take from a lot of the stuff there.
Butch Berry, I think, is extremely unpopular. I think Hackett, at least they liked him and thought he was a good guy. I think Butch Berry was yeah, there's a reason he was immediately swept out. I'm surprised Rosberg took credit for that one. Someone told me, and it was a little tongue in cheek and jokingly, but someone told me when Hackett goes, they'll fire Barry first just to make an example out of him. And it was a little tongue in cheek, but it illustrates the point of just like how low his stock was in that organization.
Yeah. No, I mean, what else is there to say there? I don't want to harp too much on it, but I thought it was interesting to point out, right? It had to be pointed out. Like, clearly, this last coaching staff was an issue. And I think that was a clear shot at the coaching staff. I also want to say that because the question was asked about what they're looking for in a new head coach, if I remember correctly, which brings us to our next point, Zach.
Am I? I'm clicking it. Sorry, everybody. Man, Bree leaves and we fall apart.
Wait, what? Oh,
wait.
No. LTB interviews.
Got you. Got you.
Okay, Broncos head coach candidates, guys.
These are the six.
These are the six guys. Obviously, Evero. We got Raheem Morris, Sean Payton. We got a lot of guys. Dan Quinn, Jim Harbaugh. What was that?
D'Amico Ryans.
Those are one of my personal favorites. I can't wait to talk about him. But Zach, do you have any takeaways from this list so far? Any individual notes you want to hit on these guys? Anything like that?
Yeah, I think I'd go just really quick. I'll run through my rankings. I'd go Harbaugh 1, Peyton 2, Ryans 3, Quinn 4, Evero 5, Morris 6. Evero, I think, is an exceptional coach, but I do think the Broncos need a clean start from the Evero era. I think it's just because the offensive coordinator picks probably Outen, and like I know there have been steps in the right direction, but like I don't think Hackett was the problem with the coaching staff. I think he was a big one, as was Barry. Stooks appears to maybe have been one, but there's still a lot of inexperience on that staff. I would like to get a little more player development in there. So Evero, that's the only reason Evero's kind of that low for me. Morris, I'm just not really sold on. I know he was a trendy pick with the Rams, but I think the defense is kind of degraded under his watch. I will say both times, or at least the one time, I forget if he was the guy who took over both times, but he definitely did it following Dan Quinn's firing. Raheem Morris is responsible for the only top third defense that Dan Quinn's Atlanta Falcons ever produced. Dan Quinn was fired 5 games into the season, and over the final 11 games, D'Amico Ryans improved what was a bottom 5 defense into being a top third of the league defense. Part of the reason I don't like the idea of hiring Dan Quinn, that's why he's down there so low. Really failed at replacing Kyle Shanahan as his OC. So there's part of the concern with him as a CEO. And then as a play caller / head coach, you see him, you see defensive play calling responsibilities taken away from him twice during his tenure in Atlanta. And both times the defense improved considerably. So I think that's a concern. He has evolved a ton in Dallas. He's been running some really unique defensive stuff. I'd say having a generational talent in Micah Parsons is probably aiding that. And I do worry if he'd be able to do that in Denver, especially because, as we just said, resources on defense are going to be tight because of that Russ thing, if that's the version they go with. D'Amico Ryans is a super trendy candidate. Love him. I think he's like all the good things with Vic Fangio, like defensive genius and everything, but he's younger. I think he's more of a player's coach. I think you look at like he's off the Kyle Shanahan tree a little bit, but I almost view him more as like coming off the Robert Saleh tree because he learned under him defensively for so long in that coaching room. And that's a great tree. The Saleh, like Pete Carroll, down to D'Amico Ryans. I would love a figure like that in the Broncos room. And then I think Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh speak for themselves. I think they're the clear top 2. They've got pelts on the wall. They're amazing coaches. I understand the personality issues are a little troublesome, but they are comfortably the best head coaches in this group of 6. So I think you deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to rank these guys so far, and it's early, my top 3 is easy for me. My top 3 is very easy. I would go Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, yes, and then DeMeco Ryans. Those are my top three for sure. Jim Harbaugh, everywhere he's gone, rebuilt something, made something bad good. That's what he's been doing every step of the way. The Broncos talk about, the trendy thing is we want a CEO type in here, an adult in the room, somebody that's going to take, not necessarily a play caller, but he's the CEO type. He's running stuff. That's Jim Harbaugh to a T. If you want someone like that, Jim Harbaugh is your guy. And he's rebuilt programs, like I said, everywhere he's gone. Sean Payton, the only reason I don't have him one is because of the assets that you'd have to trade to attain him. Now, if the Broncos went and they fell in love with Sean Payton and they said, this is our guy, we like him more than Jim Harbaugh, I'd have no problem with them trading what is needed to get him. I really don't. I think head coach is the second most important position, I guess is what you say, position on the football, part of your football team. He sets a culture. Sean Payton's a winner. He won over there. A lot of people want to attach Drew Brees to him, and that's fine. But what about what he did with Teddy Bridgewater? What about what he did with Drew Brees when he looked like a shell of himself at the end of his career? Sean Payton is an offensive genius. There's a reason why when you go look at those offenses, they were always good, no matter what. Sean Payton is exactly that type of guy. The fit with Russ would be really weird, but it's a move that goes past Russ. I'm sorry, that's what's needed. You're not not hiring Sean Payton because your quarterback that just had the worst season of his career. You're not going to make that decision because of that. And then I just want to hit on DeMeco Ryans, but you have Sean Payton point.
Sorry, yeah, really. I'll give it to you to talk all your DeMeco Ryan stuff in a second. I just Sean Payton. It's absolutely crazy. He's an amazing coach. I'm surprised there's any pushback on him. Is he maybe an unpopular figure? Some in the league. Dan Quinn. Okay, let's be real clear about all the Dan Quinn hype coming out. Dan Quinn is really good friends with George Payton, and it goes back to 2015. That's why there's buzz around him. He didn't get a head coaching job last year. It's not in his resume in Atlanta without Kyle Shanahan, rather, is that of Vic Fangio, more or less. It's not overly impressive. I just, to compare him to Sean Payton, it's like comparing Drew Brees to Ryan Tannehill. We are talking wildly different ballparks here. There are definitely concerns with Sean Payton. I think there will always be concerns with retread coaches. But yeah, this guy is a Hall of Fame coach. The one thing I wanted to hit on was the fit with Russell Wilson. I don't think the fit with Russ is concerning to me. I actually love his fit with Russ. I know it's not like the Drew Brees offense. That's not an ideal fit for Russell Wilson, certainly. But he's shown a lot of offensive creativity and the ability to pivot, pointing out the Taysom Hill thing, which is definitely valuable. And then Russ, at this point in his career, needs hard coaching. He needs to get some things sorted, hack it, let it go off the rails. And who better to give him hard coaching than the guy that coached his idol on the way to the Hall of Fame? That's pretty amazing. And for the stuff about Sean Payton quitting on the Saints, if the Saints were so mad at Sean Payton, why are they helping him pursue his dream to coach elsewhere?
Or he coached there since 2006. The Broncos haven't had a coach as long as he did with the Saints since Mike Shanahan, and that's probably the only other time they've ever had a head coach that long for their team. I think it's fine. If I have a job and I don't like my opportunity, and I have the choice to go do TV for a year and then find a job afterwards, would everyone blame me? I don't know. I can't blame everybody for making career decisions that ultimately are going to end up with him in a better situation or one that's more desirable. It's hard for me to blame Sean Payton there.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. If people were telling me that Ryan Tannehill was better than Drew Brees, I would just look at their resumes and go, "Oh, wow, that's clearly not accurate." I don't know. Look at what Sean Payton's done in the NFL. It's insane. He's one of the best head coaches of the past 15 years.
That's
Dan
weird.
Quinn was fired 2 years after he lost wunderkind Kyle Shanahan because the operation fell apart. Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Did he leave the Saints a little high and dry? He did. He did. Are the Saints livid about it? No, because they've been helping him and they've been facilitating this whole time. They could be way ruder to him. They're letting him hang out in the facility. He showed up to practices this year and just like palled around with guys. If they're so livid at him, why is he doing that? Why are they like just? I don't know. Let's critically consider this for a second here, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe George Payton wants Dan Quinn because that's his guy, that's his connection. He's currently a little on the hot seat, and this would give him some extra power in the organization. I don't know. The Saints will get a first round pick, but why are they letting him power around practice if they're so mad at him? Man, look at his resume. He's a great head coach. Even if we're going to say he's such an evil guy and the GM had nothing to do with the salary cap exploits, which again is a distorted. To think that Payton is entirely to blame for the position the Saints are in is interesting to say the least. We're talking about a Hall of Fame head coach here, or a borderline Hall of Fame head coach versus a guy who was carried by Kyle Shanahan. What are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know. It's confusing to me as well, but I want to talk up DeMeco Ryans. He would be my third choice here. Young guy, right? I really love DeMeco Ryans. Young guy, and he's the guy for all the reasons everyone loves Dan Quinn. I feel like they're talking about DeMeco Ryans sometimes. I really do. Defensive, awesome defense over there in San Fran, right? No one could take that away. But more than that, a guy that's going to completely reset the culture if he were hired. If you were hired in Denver, he would completely reset the culture. I think there is something too, and you can look at this through the league. Like these former players are able to relate to the current NFL players really well. And be a player's coach, a guy that people want to run through a wall to play for, but also demand the respect that's needed. And I want to highlight that, the respect that's needed. I think that's kind of what we were lacking this last tenure with Nathaniel Hackett. But I don't know. I like DeMeco Ryans. He's one of my favorites. I think he's going to crush it in the interviews. He's a very personal guy. Like I was sitting there listening to pressers today. I love watching that San Francisco defense play. And I don't know, like if you're looking for a CEO type of guy that's going to completely reset the Broncos' bad culture, because it is bad. Like we haven't won in a long time. DeMeco Ryans is an awesome, awesome option for me. So that's why he's my third, and he's clearly my third right now. I think he's my favorite one by a landslide after Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I am right there with you. I think he is the guy. One thing that I don't think you mentioned that is an appealing part of DeMeco Ryans to me, the potential of getting Chris Kasarik. Now, Kasarik might choose to stay in San Fran and become the defensive coordinator. I mean, I'm sure he'd be offered it. That's a pretty cushy job in its own right. But if DeMeco Ryan, there is a chance DeMeco Ryans could bring Chris Kasarik, a very well-respected, sought-after defensive line coach who is, like, you look at his player development with the 49ers, and it is remarkable. And then his schematic work, too. DJ Jones, not only the developmental stuff, though, which is obviously part of the coaching stuff, but what he does schematically in terms of these crazy wide nine splits has been transformational. So a really smart guy who players love and is able to get the most out of his players. That's what you want in a head coach, is it not? Or not a head coach. Well, I mean, I think it is what you want in a head coach, but in this case, he'd be a defensive coordinator. That's great. And I also think that description is perfect for DeMeco Ryans. I'm a big fan of him. The ability to pair what he does defensively with, some of these Shanahan guys, these top Shanahan guys that he could bring in as his OC, I think is really appealing. And there's a reason everyone's been saying this guy is next up for 2 years now. He could have had the Vikings job next year and he just pulled it out of consideration. He was probably kicking himself right now because right now that job looks like it was pretty sweet. He is a dude. I think he's going to be a very successful coach in the league wherever he ends up.
Yeah, I guess that's the only thing that I'd really want to know with DeMeco. I think he has so many qualities I would love, but I would need to know if in those interviews, the big thing and question mark for DeMeco is going to be who's your offensive staff? How are you going to make the offense work? Who are you bringing in as OC? That's going to be the biggest thing with him. But Zach, do you have anything else? I don't know. Do I want to hit on Dan Quinn? If you guys want to see me, like, in my opinions on Dan Quinn, you can follow me at JR Drafts. I've been at it for about a week and a half now on Dan Quinn. So if you want to see that, you can follow me there. If you guys want to ask me about it, you ask me about it in the Broncos Discord. And if you're not a part of that, make sure you join that. But Zach, any parting words before I send us out of here?
Yeah, I just say, I don't know. I don't know how to say what I want to say, but just like, let's like really look into the coaching stuff and see if it like holds water. I don't know. Like, I just, Dan Quinn has red flags too. Like last year when Dan Quinn George Paton was controlling the entire interviewing process, he made the conscious effort to hire Nathaniel Hackett before he even gave Dan Quinn a second interview. Like, they were going to do a second interview with Dan Quinn, and then there was a chance they were going to lose Nathaniel Hackett, and they got so scared. They were like, we would rather have Nathaniel Hackett right now than a second interview with Dan Quinn. That's how confident we are that this guy's better than Dan Quinn. Right? We've seen what Nathaniel Hackett is. Maybe Dan Quinn's not that great, right? Because he entered last cycle as the clear favorite and has been buddies with the GM for at least 7 years. The fact they wanted to work together 7 years ago means they probably go back a decade plus. And despite that really close bond, they went, I hate to tell you the tough news, good buddy, old pal, but I'm canceling that second interview because we've just got to have Nathaniel Hackett. Does that not like perk up any red flags? And if that doesn't, simply look at Dan Quinn's resume. Every time defensive play calling, which was twice, which is red flag in its own right, every time defensive play calling was taken away from him, the defense improved. So don't tell me it was just defensive talent holding him back. And then if he's going to be a CEO head coach, because it's been reported that was his lesson, he needs to sit back and be a CEO. Well, then it's important that he hires a good staff. Look at his staff hirings. Outside of Raheem Morris to save Atlanta's butt on the defensive end when Quinn's play calling was taken away from him, the hires are questionable. Oh, and Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's great, but that one was very obvious. Look at what the guy did with Brian Hoyer. So he nails the Kyle Shanahan hire, and then his inability to replace Kyle Shanahan ultimately leads to the decline of the Falcons.
Okay. Yeah, I totally agree on those Dan Quinn points. If anyone wants to see it again, follow me at Jared Tribes or like I've literally been on this for like a week and a half, or check the Discord. But Zach, where can they find your work? Before actually that, I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. It was a busy chat. Shout out Mundungus, shout out to Pat Coyote, Indy, Cal, every single person that was in here. Robert, we appreciate all of you. Thank you for joining. Rock. Yeah, I'm just scrolling this real quick. Thank you all for joining. But Zach, where can they find your amazing work, my man?
Yeah, milehighsports.com and Zach_Seegers on Twitter. Did the show earlier with Bree, and I can't wait to dive more into all these topics soon over these coming weeks here. We've got a ton to dive into, tons of like looking back at the season, looking forward at the off-season content. It's going to be great.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, everybody, you can follow me at JR Drafts, like I said. Find all my writing at Mile High Sports. And then, yeah, I just want everyone to check out the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. The DVR version's always up over there. So after this goes live, it gets thrown up on the Let's Talk Broncos YouTube. So make sure you're subscribing there. It helps us a ton. We're tweeting from the Let's Talk Broncos Twitter. Join us in the Let's Talk Broncos Discord. A lot of the people in the chat you see tonight, we're having conversation in there all day long. So make sure you're checking that out. But yeah, other than that, go Broncos, right, guys? Offseason is going to be a ton of fun. Expect a ton of arguments on the timeline, a lot of drama, which is going to be good. But until next time, guys, go Broncos.